Coaching Soccer Weekly, episode 339, The Heart of the Game. Entertaining, educational, and inspiring soccer content to help make you a more effective coach, player, or soccer parent. Hello, and welcome back to Coaching Soccer Weekly, presented by World Class Coaching. My name is Sergej Rabinovich, and this is the podcast devoted to bringing you cutting-edge methods, techniques, and tactics for coaching soccer. It doesn't matter if you're an experienced coach who has been training teams for many years, or if you're new to coaching and working with a team for the very first time. There's something we can all do to take our coaching to the next level. Well, I'm still recovering from the summer. This weekend was well deserved, I think. We had a really fantastic session that I'm going to talk about on Friday. But just having this long weekend came at the perfect time. Yesterday I actually had a PA Day camp, which is, I don't really know what PA Day stands for here in Ontario, but it's essentially a day where the teachers kind of get ready and do some stuff, I guess behind the scenes, I don't know, to get ready for school. Those PA days are scattered throughout the year. So throughout the PA days, we're going to be doing camps this year. So I did my first one yesterday, and it was really great. We really focused on scissors. And what's great about the camps is, again, it's just my players. So I know what my players need. And my players need to learn scissors. They have to get to that next level. Our Maradonas, beautiful, perfect. We use them in the games. Every game I see at least two players doing Maradonas, which is great. And they're doing it at the right time. So it's really great from that point of view, but that's really the only consistent move that I'm seeing. So we really have to start to get the rest of our moves into the game and make sure our players understand when to use them and where to use them. And I'll, I guess, kind of go through that briefly. So we start off with our step overs. Our step overs are the move that we use when our backs are turned against a player. So if I'm not facing the player, then I'll use my step over to get away from pressure. So that's the first move. Our second move that we teach our players is our scissors. Our scissors we use when we are dribbling with speed and want to quickly change direction. So scissors is what we use that for. Maradona turn is where we use it, is when our players are stopped. So if they're stopped at any point and want to get around a defender, they'll use the Maradona. If our players are in front of the net, that's when we use the fake shot Maradona or the Cruyff turn Maradona. We use our Cruyff turn when our players are shielding the ball. And then lastly, if our players are slowing down, then that's when we can also use the Matthews move, which I haven't really talked about, and I haven't really taught the players yet that well. So we also can use a side step in that situation, which I briefly talked about as well. But the main moves that we're really focusing on now are scissors, Maradona turn, step over, and fake shot Maradona, and also our Cruyff turn. So those are kind of these five big moves that we use, and we use them in these different situations. Since we didn't have games this weekend, I was able to watch a lot more of the Premier League, which was really great. I've thought this to myself for a while now, and I didn't really want to say anything, simply because I thought I would look foolish, and just because they were getting destroyed. But I watched Manchester United and Arsenal game, and from that first game, I don't know if there are United fans out there, but the first game when the new manager took over, they tried to build out of the back, and it was a giant mess. And during halftime, the correspondents and reporters just kind of started talking bad about him and saying, this is ridiculous. They're not this, that. I didn't buy that for a second. Here's why. I love that he came in there and just tried something. He had an idea. He came in with a philosophy. He came in with an idea of how he wanted to play. And from that moment on, I thought he was doing great. Obviously the wins aren't there, but it takes time. He's brought in some new players, And this game, I think United were fantastic. I'm not a United fan. I'm a City fan. But I really, really like the way United are starting to play. It's really starting to look a lot like the United teams when I grew up with Alex Ferguson. And those teams just had such a fight in them. And it's such a contrast from Manchester City, because Manchester City, it's more kind of poetry in motion, I guess is the best way to describe it. They move the ball really elegantly from side to side, waiting, kind of like a predator, waiting for their opponent, okay, to make a mistake, and then they just pounce, right? United, when I grew up, they just fought for it. And there's something about watching a team fight that I absolutely love. And that's what I love about our players and the way that we play. We go out there and we compete and we fight for the ball, and we want teams, win or lose, to not want to play us again. To go, oh, I'm tired of this, right? I don't want to play gladiators again. And I think watching the game against Arsenal, that was the first time that I really saw a Manchester United team since Alex Ferguson just battle for everything and just really fight for it. On top of that, the way they played was also really great. Hopefully this doesn't become a thing where I talk about Manchester United as a City fan. That's not something that I want to do. But, this weekend was a really great way to just kind of sit, watch, learn, and observe, which I absolutely love doing always when it comes to the game of soccer. And if you like that too, then you'll like Vio, who is, again, our sponsor today. So thank you, Vio, for that. If you are looking to record your games, watch that back, Vio is an automatic video camera system that you can put up. I think it goes up to like 20 feet, something like that. And it follows the ball. It creates highlight for you. And they're constantly improving their AI technology. So thanks, Vio, for sponsoring the podcast. And if you're looking for your own Vio, you can use our code CSW100. That's CSW, Coaching Soccer Weekly, 100. Usually when I do the show, I like to do things chronologically and just kind of talk about the weekend that way. But today's different. So we didn't have games on the weekend, but I really wanted to talk about United. So I started with that. But now we're going to rewind to Friday night. Friday night was the first day where we had our practice times changed due to the early sunset. So what that meant is that from our 2014s all the way to our 2009s, they're all practicing at the same time, which has never happened before. It's 5 different age groups essentially, because we have 2014s, 13s, 12s, 11s, and 2010s all in the same time. And what I thought would be really great, and what I wanted to do for the rest of the month of September, because they're going to be practicing together every single session, is just do 1v1 tournaments, 1v1 plus 1, and 2v2 tournaments throughout the month. But during the session, like right as I was talking to them, I just had this idea of doing a promotion relegation type thing. So here's what I did, and I have to say, out of every single 1v1 session, and I've run many, many, many 1v1 sessions, this was probably the best 1v1 session I've ever run. So here's what happened. I'll tell you a little story about it, and we'll go from there. So on Friday, we actually split them up into 2. We had the 2012s all the way to the 2009s in one session, and then everyone else in the other session. Now, what I really wanted was to bring the 2012 team and the 2011 and 10 team together, because, and it's funny because someone like Anson Dorns, who had his podcast, he talks a lot about the advantage of girls playing with boys, and how girls bring in something that the boys don't have, and the boys bring in something that the girls don't have, and it just creates a really good environment. and both genders kind of help each other. And that's really what I wanted from the 2012s and 10-11. So the 2012s, what they bring is they bring a competitiveness, a seriousness, and professionalism. And they also bring just everything that you would associate with a traditional academy player. You know, someone who shows up, wants to work hard, and just gives everything. So they bring that, and that's something that the 2011-10 team really lacks. They lack discipline, but they're all really great players individually, but they're just not serious all the time. They kind of joke around and all that. So bringing the 2012s to the 2011 and 10s to train with them, in my head at least, was going to up the level of play, because it was going to force the older team not to joke around. Because if we're doing one-on-ones and you're playing against a 2012 and they're beating you, that's going to be a pretty bad feeling if someone 2 years younger than you or 1 year younger than you is beating you. So that was kind of in my head. And the 2012s, what I've noticed in their recent games is some of them are a little shy in battling for the ball. Don't get me wrong, most of the team still battles for it, but I think they can be a lot more aggressive than they are. And I wanted them to play against the 2011-10 team because I knew they would show up and fight for it. So I had these two contrasting ideas of two different teams with two different identities, and I brought them together. And it just brought out everything. At the beginning, I made sure to sit down with all the players together, 2012 all the way to 2010s, 2009s even. We had a couple of 2009s there. And I simply said this, okay, a lot of you, are great players, but today we're going to find out who the best player in the academy is, from 2012 all the way to 2009. And then I said this, for the rest of the month, we're going to have a promotion relegation system. The top 3 players, when we split up our 2012s and 13s, which is what we're going to do moving forward and have 3 sessions, we'll have them in one session, 2010s and 2011s in the next session. So we're going to have a promotion system where the top 2012s are going to move up and play against the 2010s and 2011s. And the 3 players who finish in the bottom of the 2010s and 2011s are going to move down. So that's going to be what we're doing moving forward. But today I said, let's just play 1v1s and see who the best player in the academy is. We'll get everyone together. Okay, 2012s, you can show what you can do. And just really try and let them know that this is it. Okay, you want to prove yourself, and a lot of these players want to prove themselves. Okay, and that's really what you get out of those 1v1 is taking that responsibility and proving yourself. So we went on and we started, and right away, a level of seriousness that I have not seen from the 2010-11s ever came out. And the 2012s just started battling harder than they've ever had to before because these are bigger, stronger players, and it just created the best environment. We had 2 of our best goalies in goal. It was a pretty short field again, always 25 by 20. Okay, 25 long, 20 wide, right? Yeah. And just the competitiveness. And for the first time in a very long time, here's what happened. At the end of the game, they would sit down, scores, dead silence. There were about, I want to say, 18 kids there. Dead silence. Everyone was tired. Everyone was giving it their all. And that's what I want out of my 1v1 sessions. And this was the perfect environment for it. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this for the whole month of September. And that'll take us into indoor. And we're going to start today, which is Wednesday actually when I'm recording. We're going to have 3 different sessions. We're going to have one session with the younger kids. That's going to be a little bit further away. And then from the 2013s all the way to the 2010s, we're going to have 2 sessions right beside each other, doing 1v1s for this week. What that's going to do is allow me to move players around at the very beginning and have that same effect. I'm going to talk to the players and say, listen, from now on, for the rest of the month, we're going to do the promotion relegation. And I'm not going to move players down from the 2013 to the other session. I really want the 2010s and 11s to understand that when they show up to practice, they got to be serious. And if they're not, they're just going to play down. And they're going to play with the younger kids because that's going to be a great environment where it's serious. And the 2012s that are already pretty physical, or we also have one 2013 who's also very physical, they're going to be able to have the opportunity to play up and get ready for the indoor league, right? Which is going to be, I think, a lot tougher for our players. It's going to be a lot more aggressive than what we've had here for some of the younger kids. So it's going to be a really good environment, at least in my head. And so far, it's proven it. And then the top three players from our 2012-13 1v1s are going to go and play up. And then the bottom three or top two, I haven't decided yet. We'll see on the numbers. And it's a really cool feeling that out of the 2013 and 12s, you are the top two best players, so you get to move up. And it's not a good feeling to have to move down. And I know that's kind of, I don't like punishing players, but I think this is a different type of punishment because these players are fooling around. So rather than having them sit out for a session, I want them to go down and have that experience and see what it's like to play with players that are serious and probably, I would argue, some of the best players in the leagues. Our 2013 definitely, and our 2012, I would say at least half of our team, I've yet to see a team with better players. So I think it's going to be a really good environment. We'll see, and I'll obviously talk about that next week along with the games. But really wanted to share that with you. And if this is something that you can do with your players, you know, I think the biggest problem that most coaches have is the lack of relationship with other teams within their club or academy. You just kind of get a team and that's it. But if you can get, let's say you're the second team and you have a relationship with that first team coach, right, or that third team, get everyone together and play. It's a really good opportunity for those players that are a step lower to try and prove themselves. And it's a really good environment for the first team players to do the exact same thing, to say, no, I am on the first team, and try and prove that to themselves. Sometimes you have that really cocky player who's just kind of like, I'm the best, I don't need to try. Well, this environment changes that. When I was growing up, which was in the early 2000s, I was a multi-sport athlete, so soccer was by far my favorite sport, but basketball was pretty close, and anything with a ball I would play, unless it was in water, because I'm a terrible swimmer. But basketball and soccer were really my two sports, and absolutely loved them, played them. I was on the school teams for everything. And it was just around that time where and one became a really big deal. And one, for those that don't know, was this kind of street ball type company, basketball company, that was all about showing off. It was kind of that culture of, it doesn't really matter if I win or lose. I just really want to play one against one and really embarrass whoever I'm playing against and make sure everyone on the court knows that I am the best. And it was seen as this really cool thing when I was growing up. You know, there was the NBA, but street ball, that was like, oh my goodness. And then these street ball video games came out, and it was all about trying to do these moves and fakes and these really cool things to get a reaction out of people. And recently on, I think it's Netflix, I watch it on something else, but on Netflix there was the And One story. And it just kind of really reminded me of growing up and just being part of that. And in that documentary, one of the things that they said that really had a profound impact on me when I heard it was that when the owners thought about what this was and one when they were first forming it, they wanted to capture the heart of the game, right? Forget the NBA, the big, you know, money and all that. That's not what basketball was about to these people. It was about, you know, working hard in school, and then after school or whenever you had some free time, let's go out, play with your friends, and just kind of have fun. And it was within that documentary that everything kind of clicked into how I best can explain the 1v1s within my own academy, because that's really what we're trying to capture with these kids. It's the heart of the game. When I was growing up, I was very fortunate because we lived in a circle and there were a lot of other kids my age, and after school we would all get together and play games, whether it was roller hockey, basketball, soccer, swimming, really anything, baseball. We would just get together and play video games. We would watch movies, and it was just kind of like this neighborhood thing. And we never kept score. It was never about that. But it was always fun because we competed hard, and we would just kind of create our own thing. And this is really what the 1v1s are. And why it works so well. Because you're kind of getting this playground environment, which kids absolutely love, right? And you're encouraging them to express themselves in a way that they just don't get when they're playing with teammates. They just don't get that. So that 1v1 culture is really where that heart of the game, the battle, what in my head soccer was when I was growing up. And it's so much fun for these kids that at the end of the session, always they go, "Is that it?" Because it just seems like everything flies by because they're having so much fun. And this And One documentary, you could see the smiles on these adults' faces when they're just going out there and they're doing their thing. They're just trying to break ankles and this and that and showing off. And that's what I want for my players. I want that smile. I want that smile when they're playing, when they break that Maradona and hit that ball top corner. That's what it's about. And the heart of the game is, I think, what we should all be looking for, right? It is so organized, and it's killing the creativity of these players. I mean, half of these teams that we're playing against, the kids aren't able to think and act independently. I was watching on Monday the VO of the past game, which we lost 3-0 with our 2012s. But the other coach constantly shoot, pass, dribble, giving these kids instructions, and these kids aren't able to think for themselves. There's no creativity. He is lost the heart of the game. Why are these kids playing? What's the point? You might as well get robots, give the coach the controller, and let the coach do it. The kids aren't playing. The kids aren't thinking. They're not doing anything. This is where the heart of the game is. A crazy, wild environment, like a wild, wild west, where there is so much going on, right? Think of that wild, wild west, and you just think of chaos. That's what you think of. And so often we associate chaos with something bad, and that's just not true. It's not always bad, because out of chaos, a lot of the time, the way to fix it is through something brilliant. So we're forcing the players to be in a chaotic environment where their only solution and their only way to come out on top is to be creative and to do something brilliant. And that is the heart of the game. There's another part of the Netflix documentary with a referee, and I literally just saw the trailer for it. And the ref talks about how eventually throughout, he's an NBA ref, and he wanted to fit in and all this. And he talks about how refs are going to let the best players kind of do their thing and call less on those stars. Why? Because that's what the fans are there to pay for. So if those players foul out, then the fans aren't getting their money's worth. And why is this such a big deal? Well, these are the players that are holding the heart of the game in their sport. It's those superstar athlete, and what are they doing? They're doing the brilliance. They're doing the thing that no one sees coming. And the only reason they're able to do that is because of this creativity in their mind. And you can't get that creativity by taking it away and telling them what to do. That doesn't work. You can't tell. You look at all the most influential creations and inventions in history, and they didn't come from people who thought like everyone else, right? They were a little bit off, a little bit weird, a little quirky. You know, they just had this creativity that no one would do what they did. No one would even think about it. Why? Because those are the people that change the world, and that's what we want. We want players that can change the game. So to win the game 1-0 or 3-0 as they beat us, and the players not do a thing. Yes, fine, they kicked it. But if you tell them to kick it, if you tell them to pass it, they didn't do anything. You did it. They have to think independently. They have to. And this one-on-one environment that And One created, and the street ball mentality, is really what allows us, our players, to become these creative leaders within the academy and in life, and that's what we want. Now, you're probably sitting there, and you're saying, well, Segev, this is all nice. You know, the ideas, love it, all this, but I've got parents. And these parents, if we lose 7 games in a row, they're not going to be happy. And you're right. So the question is, and it's a really important question, is how do we get everyone on board? How do we make sure that parents are on our side? Because honestly, at my academy, I feel like all the parents are on our side. Win, lose, draw, doesn't matter. The parents understand it. And the reason they understand it is because it is my job as the coach, as the academy owner, to make sure they understand it. And the way that we do that is a lot of different ways. Number one, 1v1s every practice so the parents see it. That's so important. Parents sit, watch. It is really important that the parents see it, that we're working on this every single time, because if they don't see that we're working on it and the kids try it at a game and they fail, that's not going to work, right? They're going to be like, why did he try this crazy thing where I've never even seen it done? So it's really important the parents see that you're working on it every single week. Number two, and this is something that I learned from Tom, is this has to be the most important thing that you talk about and stress in your parent meeting. And if you don't have a parent meeting, this will never work. It won't work. You need to have a parent meeting at the beginning of every season, and that's what I've started to do now. And I have a presentation, a PowerPoint that I created that's tailored to the academy, and I talk about over and over again the idea of we're not going to win. If you want to win, you are in the wrong place. That's what I say. I say it bluntly like that. What I am looking for is creating the best player on the field. That's it. That's what I care about. We will lose, and if we win more than we should, I will make sure we don't do that. I will put us in harder situations so that we don't win every game, because I don't want to win every game. I want the players to be constantly challenged, and I want them to fail so they can learn to pick themselves back up. That's what I want. And that's the identity of the academy. To fail and fail and fail And even if they fail, they're going to keep trying. And that's such an important life lesson. Now, eventually they'll fail so many times in our practices, then they'll start succeeding. And when they start to succeed in the 1v1s in our practices, there's no player that we're playing against that can stop them. So 2014s, our under 9s, we struggle. Our under 10s, we struggle-ish. 2012s, that's the first team that's been with us since they were young. They were with us through COVID, and they are not struggling. Most of these players, when they go 1v1, they will succeed. And if they don't, they will win the ball back. But this took years and years and years of failure. As I mentioned, my first 3 years of business, we did not win a single game, and I was okay with that. So it is so important to get the parents on your side. It is so important for them to see the big picture. And if you do not have this parent meeting, everything that I talk about, rondos, 1v1s, positional play, all that will not work. Because the parents are your greatest assets. That's it. The parents are the ones that in the car, on the ride home, whether you like it or not, are talking to their child about the game. They are saying, oh, next time, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And if they do not understand the process of 1v1s, then they're in the car saying, next time, pass the ball. Next time, kick it up. Next time, kick it out. And then the player does it, and you go, well, that's not what we worked on, because there's a disconnect. The parents are so important to understand what you're doing. There's a reason I put all my teams in Tier 2 this year. The simple reason is that we didn't know what to expect, so I wanted that. But the other reason is because what I ask of my players is so hard that they have to start at a step lower just to break even. When I ask my players to play out of the back constantly, which is not something that we do as much anymore, but what I do ask is that when my wingers receive the ball, if they have space in 1v1s, go for it. Go for the 1v1s, show me a move. That is so hard because if they fail, when they fail, which you go 10 times, if you succeed 7, that's fantastic. If you beat a player 7 times out of 10, right? An 11v11, if you are a winger, right, in a 4-3-3, and you beat a player 7 out of 10 times, 3 of those times should be goals, right? If you're on the wing in the final third, you should be able to find that pass. But when it's 7v7 and there's 2 players behind and everyone is spread out, then you don't have backup. So you lose the ball and then you get scored on. That's tough, right? That's very tough. And putting our players in really hard positions. Whereas other teams get that ball, get it to the wing, kick it up, let's go, right? Fair enough. But when I ask this of my players, we can't play in Tier 1. It doesn't work like that. At least not yet. Now, I tell you this because I can see the big picture here, and I'm in a really different situation. So, for example, we started this, call it experiment, with the 2012s. Now we have 2015s and 14s and 16s that have been playing with these 2012, 13s, and 14 players and are now at a ridiculous level that they can keep up with these players that are 2-3 years up, and these players are already some of the best players in the league. So when I look at the teams coming up, the challenge isn't as much anymore. When I look at this 2016, 2015 team, as of the players that we have now, I'm not really worried anymore. I'm not worried about us losing every game. I'm not really worried about us going 1v1 and losing the ball 6 out of 10 times, which is what happened when these 2012s started. They would lose the ball 6 out of 10 times. Now I look at these 2016s, and I'm very confident with the players we have so far in the 2015s that we're going to win 7 of those 10 battles, right? Which is still going to end up in losses and goals against us. But the more we do this, the better players that are starting at 5 years old, because now they're getting this exposure to these bigger, stronger players who are already really good and are able to keep up with them. And it's going to be like that moving forward for all our teams. And that's why it's so important not to play by age group, right? So in our training sessions, if we had players by age group, we would simply just start over every time. And I don't want to start over. I've worked so hard. Why would I want to start over every single time? That doesn't make sense. So when a player is good enough, we move them up so that it becomes challenging again, really, really challenging, and they can start to continue to build and build and build until they move up even more, right? And that's how we create that atmosphere and how we create situations now where the teams aren't struggling anymore at the beginning. Our 2013s, this was our U9 year. If you can remember to our winter U9 year, we were struggling. Like we were losing 10, 12, 16, 0. I don't know that we're going to have that problem. We might, but looking at the 2013 team that we have, I don't know. Those are some great players. Half of them were playing with the 2012s. We've got a great goalkeeper now. Like, these are problems that we used to have. By the way, the game that we lost 3-0, we didn't have our goalkeeper, and we put in a 2013, right? And the mistakes that he made, our 2012 goalkeeper wouldn't have made. So the fact that we now have goalies in the academy, life changer. And the fact that our players have been playing with these 2012s, that 2013s, they're now obviously going to be U10s, but this is going to be a strong U10 team. Our U11 team, which is now our 2012 team, very strong team. Our under 12 team, which is our 2011, they've been playing a full year up with 2010s. They are big, strong. They are fantastic players. And some of them have been the best players on the field with 2010s. Our 2014s, they're the newest age group, and they're going to struggle. But we have 2015 and 16 players on there. So when we look at all the academy teams now, we can really start to appreciate the value of this one-on-one. But it's a struggle. And that's what I love about it, because that is the heart of the game that I grew up with. I grew up going to recess, playing against sixth graders, and looking at the clock, being like, okay, 10 more minutes till recess. 10 more minutes, and I'm going to show these sixth graders who's boss. I would go out, and I would do everything in my power to be accepted by these kids. They were 2 years older than me. I was in grade 4. And you need to prove yourself to play with the grade 6s. You just did. So you have to go out there and just be the best player on the field in order for them to be like, okay, you can start playing with us. And that's the environment that I want to create, because that's the heart of the game. Imagine looking at the clock and being like, okay, I have practice in an hour. Okay, today I'm playing the 2010s, 2 years up. I'm gonna show these guys. I'm gonna show them. That's the heart of the game for me. Thanks for listening to another episode of Coaching Soccer Weekly. I love the challenges that come with our 1v1s. And whenever I see that environment, it really puts a smile to my face. I want my players to compete. I want my players to show up for everything, not just in the game, but in life. And whenever they get knocked down, whenever they're faced with this big challenge, that they go after it and they be confident in who they are. Whether they succeed or they fail, they have the ability to get back up and keep going. That's what I want from my players more than anything than winning Saturday's game. That's just not that important. And I hope that you can see that as well. If you have Netflix, I would go see the And One special. But until then, enjoy the journey, enjoy the moments, but most importantly, enjoy the game.
Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end, and you can check out more of our videos right here. And if you haven't done so already, I would really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button and the subscribe button.